Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where I, Gooey, rank all of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda series. And this week on our quest through Oracle of Ages, seeking out the next dungeon has us encountering the Gorons of Rolling Ridge. We're also getting up to some paradoxical adventures. In the past, the Goron Elder is trapped from underneath a giant boulder. Meanwhile, I guess, in the present, the Gorons have a tale of a brave adventurer who freed the Elder using the Goron's special crop, the bomb flower. Unfortunately, their supply of the crop has been taken over by the Great Moblin. After facing him down, we're able to recover the crop, bring it back to the past, and become the hero of the Goron people. The Elder awards us with the Crown Key, which gives us entry into our next dungeon, Crown Dungeon. Crown Dungeon, shaped like a crown. Need I say more? This dungeon sees the return of the Crystal Switch block puzzles from previous entries in the series, and it's pretty strongly centered around them. We see them implemented in a pretty classical fashion, creating some solid navigational puzzles centered around them. It actually has a fairly interesting layout where you can cover a good deal of the dungeon initially. You can even see the boss chamber door early on, and the trick is more to do with the branching paths you can find on the main floor layout and how far you can progress down them depending on what items or keys you have. Not only that, but how the blocks from the crystal switches are situated. So it's a great non-linear formula where they mix in different keys and crystal switches and eventually the dungeon item, the Cane of Samaria, and it creates a good non-linear dynamic. It also creates, a lot of backtracking, and it'll probably give people some headaches if you're not being totally diligent. It's great. It's navigationally pretty strong. I think the crystal switch is maybe one of the best implementations of this mechanic, but it is, there's nothing, that's totally new here or totally that exciting, but just a really solid, non-linear puzzle dungeon. And some of the puzzles in some of the rooms are actually kind of nice too. We see return of, switch hook puzzles. We've got more color block and statue pushing puzzles that are unique in their own way, so that's pretty solid. We also see the return of Link's Awakening mini-boss, Smasher, but the more unique encounter here that I want to talk about is from the final boss, Smog. This big, cloudy demon thing asks us to play a game with him, and he's more of a puzzle sort of boss as he splits into tinier little versions of himself, and we have to use the Cane of Samaria, which can create blocks on the floor, to sort of guide him around his path and to get the smaller versions to collide, and then they eventually grow into his true form, which can be damaged by an attack. Getting this to work can feel a little bit wonky, but once you figure it out, it does feel pretty satisfying to defeat him. Our essence of time that we get for defeating him is the Sacred Soil. All that lies sleeping in the bosom of the earth will know the nourishing warmth of the sacred soil. So here we got a really solid puzzle exploration dungeon, kind of a what do you call it? A meat and potato dungeon. It really feels like just a classic Zelda dungeon. I'm pretty fond of that, so I'm probably gonna rank it pretty high in the game. I feel like I again feel like Skull Dungeon had more fun, like room to room moments, but I think I appreciate the overall challenge of this dungeon a little bit more. I'm sure for some people it can kind of feel like a little bit of a headache, but I really like it, like taking note of what items or what keys you need. So I think it's better than Skull Dungeon, and even though this is probably more complicated than Moonlit Grotto, I think that one still has done the best with kind of having a really unique gimmick that it really fully takes advantage of. This one does really fully take advantage of the crystal switches. I'll definitely give it that, but I don't know. It might be one of the best crystal switch dungeons too, but that's, I feel like those roundabout things, it's just so much more unique, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like even the best crystal switch based dungeon, it's still kind of like there's more unique gimmicks and puzzle and navigational concepts that you come up with, So, I mean, if I'm putting it even below Moonlit Grotto, it's still going ahead of some of the greatest crystal switch dungeons like Swamp Palace or something like that. But, I mean, I guess Eagle's Tower is kind of one of those, but there's a lot more going on with that too. So yeah, above Skull Dungeon, below Moonlit Grotto, which on the main list, it really limits where it can get placed. And I'm actually, everyone knows my love of Misery Mire, and I still am gonna keep it protected a little bit, keep it strong a little bit. So I'm gonna put Crown Dungeon just under Misery Mire still. So here we are, Oracle of Aegis, pretty consistent, solid dungeons. We got a few more left, so we've gotten in the top 15, but will they get in the top 10? That remains to be seen. Seasons couldn't do it, and we still have to get past this top chunk of Seasons dungeons that are ahead of the rest of Ages, so we'll see. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week.